Commander Zethkar adjusted his crystalline battle armor as he surveyed the battlefield from his command vessel. The human colony of New Eden stretched across the valley below, its primitive structures barely qualifying as military fortifications in his experienced eyes. After decades of conquest across 17 star systems, the hegemony had learned to expect swift victories against newly discovered species. Humans, according to their intelligence reports, were no different from the dozens of other primitive civilizations they had absorbed into their empire. The hegemony's military doctrine was straightforward and had proven effective time and again. Overwhelming ground forces supported by aerial bombardment would crush resistance within standard rotations. Their soldiers were genetically enhanced warriors, each standing nearly 3 meters tall, with reflexes enhanced by neural implants, and bodies capable of withstanding punishment that would kill most organic life forms. Their weapons fired coherent energy beams that could punch through reinforced steel, and their armor could deflect most conventional projectiles. Zethkar's tactical display showed the disposition of human forces. Scattered defensive positions, primitive ballistic weapons, and what appeared to be hastily constructed barriers made from local materials. The humans had approximately 800 defenders spread across a perimeter that his forces could breach in multiple locations simultaneously. It would be over quickly. Deploy the advanced scouts, Zethkar commanded through his neural link. Standard suppression pattern. I want this settlement pacified within 2 rotations. The first wave of hegemony scouts moved across the open ground with practiced efficiency. These were elite soldiers, chosen for their speed and reconnaissance capabilities. Their mission was simple: identify human defensive positions, mark targets for the main force, and eliminate any immediate threats. Each scout carried enough firepower to level a small building, and their enhanced vision could detect heat signatures and movement at distances that would challenge most species' best equipment. Scout leader Vexhai led his unit of 12 across the rocky terrain that separated the landing zone from the human settlement. His enhanced vision immediately cataloged the defensive positions: crude barriers, primitive weapons that appeared to fire metal projectiles, and defenders who seemed woefully unprepared for what was coming. He transmitted target coordinates back to the command vessel, marking locations where concentrated fire would break human resistance most effectively. The first shot came from nowhere. Vexhai was examining a human bunker through his scope when his second-in-command simply ceased to exist. One moment Scout Temvor was advancing across open ground. The next moment, there was an expanding cloud of vapor where his torso had been. The sound of the impact reached them a fraction of a second later, followed by the distant crack of a primitive chemical propellant weapon. Vexhai immediately signaled his remaining scouts to take cover. His enhanced hearing tried to trace the origin of the shot, but the sound had echoed off the canyon walls, making precise location impossible. His tactical display showed no muzzle flash, no heat signature, no indication of where the attack had originated. Another scout dropped as they scrambled for cover. This time, Vexhai caught a glimpse of the projectile's trajectory, a barely visible streak that suggested the shot had come from an impossible distance. His enhanced vision scanned the far ridgeline, nearly 3 kilometers away. No conventional weapon should have been effective at that range, especially not against their armor. "Command, we have contact," Vexhai reported through his neural link. "Unknown weapon system. High-velocity projectiles. 2 scouts down." Zethkar studied the tactical display from his command vessel. The reported range was indeed unusual, but not unprecedented. Some species developed long-range energy weapons as their primary military doctrine. Adaptive shields, he ordered. Modify energy absorption patterns for ballistic threats. But the scouts' adaptive shields had been designed to deflect energy weapons and conventional projectiles. They were not prepared for what was hitting them. The third shot struck Scout Cavnell's center mass, and his enhanced armor, designed to withstand direct hits from heavy energy weapons, offered no more protection than if he had been wearing ceremonial robes. Vexai realized with growing unease that something was fundamentally wrong with their intelligence reports. These were not primitive projectile weapons firing simple metal slugs. The velocity and penetrating power suggested technology that should have been beyond human capabilities according to their pre-invasion analysis. The fourth scout died while attempting to reach better cover. This time, Vexai managed to track the projectile's path back toward its origin. His enhanced vision focused on a rocky outcrop nearly 4 kilometers distant. Even with his augmented sight, he could detect nothing. No heat signature, no movement, no indication that anything was there. Contact at grid reference 77 Alpha, he transmitted. Request immediate bombardment. The command vessel's response was swift. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, turning the targeted area into molten glass. Vexai waited for the confirmation that the threat had been eliminated. Instead, another scout died. This shot had come from an entirely different direction. Vexai's tactical display registered multiple possible firing positions across a front that spanned nearly 8 kilometers. Either the humans had far more long-range weapons than intelligence had suggested, or individual shooters were repositioning with impossible speed. Command. Vexai's voice carried a note of uncertainty that was rare among hegemony scouts. We need immediate extraction. We're taking casualties from multiple positions. Enemy capabilities exceed our intelligence parameters. Zethkar studied the incoming reports with growing concern. Elite scouts didn't request extraction unless facing overwhelming force. But the tactical display showed only scattered human defensive positions, exactly as their intelligence had predicted. Elaborate on enemy capabilities, he demanded. Unknown projectile weapons with effective range exceeding 4,000 meters. Vexai reported while his remaining scouts hugged the rocky terrain. Penetration capability that defeats our adaptive armor. No detectable signatures prior to impact. Multiple firing positions suggest either rapid repositioning or larger force than anticipated. Another scout's life signs disappeared from the tactical display. 7 of 12 scouts eliminated, and the main force hadn't even engaged yet. Zethkar had never encountered anything like this in 17 systems of conquest. Most species fought with energy weapons at ranges measured in hundreds of meters. These humans were striking at distances that challenged even hegemony military doctrine. Extract the remaining scouts, Zethkar ordered. Reassess enemy capabilities before main assault. Vexai and his 4 survivors reached the extraction point under cover of orbital bombardment. Even with heavy fire from the command vessel suppressing a wide area around their retreat route, 2 more scouts died during the withdrawal. The humans continued striking from positions that seemed impossible to locate or target effectively. Back aboard the command vessel, Vexai delivered his report to assembled senior officers. They're not using energy weapons, he explained to the disbelieving faces around him. Chemical propellants launching solid projectiles at velocities that exceed our defensive parameters. Individual shooters operating at ranges where our enhanced vision can barely detect them. Impossible, declared weapons master KYTHRA. No species develops such primitive technology to such extremes. Energy weapons are universally adopted once basic physics is understood. Nevertheless, Vexai continued, they're achieving penetration that our adaptive shields cannot counter. The projectiles appear to be dense metal cores moving at hypersonic velocities. Impact force is sufficient to defeat any personal armor we've encountered. Zethkar studied the tactical recordings. The humans had eliminated 7 elite scouts without revealing their positions or suffering any apparent casualties in return. More concerning was their apparent ability to strike accurately at ranges that pushed the limits of what should be possible with primitive ballistic weapons. Analysis suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of human military capabilities, reported intelligence officer Morthek. Either our initial assessment was completely incorrect, or humans have developed specialized warfare techniques that don't conform to standard technological progression patterns. The command staff exchanged uncertain glances. In 17 systems of conquest, They had never encountered anything like this. Species either fought with primitive weapons at short range or advanced energy weapons at moderate range. The concept of developing primitive chemical propellant weapons to such extreme effectiveness was outside their experience. Recommendation: Zethkar inquired. Modified assault doctrine, suggested tactics coordinator Ralvex. Increased spacing between units, random movement patterns, heavy preliminary bombardment to suppress long-range positions. And if that fails to neutralize their long-range capability? Ralvex hesitated. Then we reassess human threat classification and request additional fleet support. Zethkar contemplated the implications. Fleet Command would not be pleased if a routine subjugation required reinforcements. His reputation, built on swift and efficient conquests, would suffer considerable damage. But the alternative was deploying his main force into unknown capability range without adequate countermeasures. Implement modified assault doctrine, he decided. Deploy advanced bombardment to suppress suspected firing positions. Main force advances with maximum dispersion and evasive movement patterns. We will not be deterred by primitive projectile weapons, regardless of their apparent effectiveness. The order was transmitted throughout the assault force. Enhanced warriors began preparing for what their commanders assured them would be a slightly more challenging, but ultimately routine conquest. None of them had faced an enemy that could strike accurately at distances where they appeared as mere specks on the horizon. None of them understood that they were about to encounter humanity's most refined military art form, developed through centuries of warfare and perfected by individuals who could place a projectile precisely where intended from distances that challenged the laws of physics themselves. The second wave would learn what the first wave had died trying to understand. Humans had taken the primitive art of sending projectiles across distance and elevated it to a science that bordered on the supernatural. They called their practitioners snipers, and they were about to demonstrate why distance was humanity's greatest tactical advantage. Sarah Chun settled into her hide among the rocky outcroppings of Sentinel Ridge, 5 kilometers from the approaching alien force. Her rifle, a modified M2087 anti-material weapon, was perfectly zeroed for the environmental conditions. Wind speed 2 meters per second from the southeast. Temperature 22 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure within normal parameters. Range to primary target zone 4,800 meters. She had been in position for 14 hours, moving into place under cover of darkness while the alien scouts conducted their reconnaissance. The rocky terrain provided perfect concealment, and her ghillie suit, crafted from local vegetation, made her effectively invisible even to enhanced vision systems. The aliens had proven that much during their first probe when they had failed to detect any of the sniper positions despite their obvious technological advantages. Through her scope, Sarah watched the alien main force deploy across the valley floor. Even at this distance, their size was impressive. Individual soldiers stood nearly 3 meters tall, moving with enhanced coordination that suggested cybernetic augmentation. Their weapons emitted coherent energy beams that turned rocks to vapor where they struck. Their armor appeared to be some form of adaptive material that shifted color to match surrounding terrain. Overwatch, this is Phantom 7. Sarah spoke quietly into her throat microphone. I have eyes on primary formation. Estimate 400 hostiles in main group, advancing in dispersed formation. They've learned from a scout engagement. Copy, Phantom 7, came the reply from Colonel Martinez in the command bunker. Confirm engagement rules. You are cleared to engage targets of opportunity. Priorities are command staff and heavy weapons operators. Sarah adjusted her scope for the precise range to the lead elements of the alien formation. The hegemony forces were indeed moving with better tactical awareness than their scouts had shown. Individual soldiers maintained separation that would prevent multiple casualties from a single shot, and their movement patterns suggested they understood the threat of long-range precision fire. But they didn't understand how good human snipers actually were. Sarah selected her first target, a figure near the center of the formation whose different colored armor and position suggested command authority. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm she had practiced thousands of times. Heart rate dropped to resting levels. The crosshairs settled on center mass of the target, and she began her firing sequence. The first shot struck Commander Zethkar's senior tactical officer in the chest, the hypervelocity projectile punching through adaptive armor as if it were paper. The alien's enhanced physiology kept him conscious for nearly 3 seconds after impact, long enough to transmit a shock report that his vital organs had been catastrophically damaged by what appeared to be a simple metal slug moving at impossible velocity. Contact. Long-range contact. The transmission echoed through the hegemony formation as soldiers sought cover that didn't exist on the open ground between ridgelines. Sarah was already tracking her second target. The aliens' dispersed formation meant she couldn't achieve multiple kills with rapid fire, but it also meant their command structure was exposed across a wide area. She selected an alien whose weapons pack suggested heavy support capability and began her firing sequence again. From her position 8 kilometers to the south, Phantom 6 also engaged. Marcus Thompson had been a competitive shooter before the colony was established, holding records for extreme long-range precision that pushed the boundaries of what ballistic weapons could achieve. His rifle, a custom-built precision instrument capable of placing shots accurately beyond 6,000 meters, spoke with authority that carried across the valley. His target, a hegemony weapons specialist preparing some form of heavy energy cannon, simply ceased to exist above the waist. The projectile strike was so violent that nearby aliens were knocked down by the shockwave and debris from the impact. Multiple contacts. Weapons Master KawaiTHRA shouted into her communicator while seeking cover behind a boulder that was inadequate for someone of her size. Grid references unknown. We need immediate suppression fire on all elevated positions. But the orbital bombardment that followed struck empty rock. The human snipers had selected positions that offered multiple firing angles and escape routes. By the time energy beams turned their previous locations into molten glass, they had already moved to alternate positions and were acquiring new targets. From a northern ridge, Phantom 1 opened fire. Elena Rodriguez had learned precision shooting in Earth's military before joining the colonization effort. Her specialty was moving targets at extreme range, and the advancing aliens provided perfect practice. Her first shot dropped an alien who was attempting to direct his squad toward cover. Her second shot, fired before the sound of the first impact had reached her position, eliminated another command figure who had exposed himself while trying to coordinate suppression fire. The hegemony force found itself in an impossible tactical situation. They were taking casualties from multiple directions at ranges where return fire was ineffective. Their energy weapons, designed for engagements at conventional distances, couldn't accurately target enemies they couldn't see at distances beyond their effective range. Their enhanced vision could detect muzzle flashes, but by the time they oriented to respond, the human shooters had changed position. Status report. Commander Zethkar demanded from his command vehicle, which had been hastily moved to a position offering overhead cover. 17 casualties confirmed, reported his aide. All command staff and heavy weapons specialists. Enemy firing positions span approximately 12 kilometers of elevated terrain. Suppression bombardment has been ineffective. Impossible, Zethkar snarled. No species fights effectively at such ranges with primitive weapons. But the evidence was accumulating on his tactical display. Red icons marked fallen soldiers, all eliminated by precise shots at distances that challenged his understanding of ballistic science. More disturbing was the pattern of targeting. The humans weren't firing randomly into his formation. They were systematically eliminating command structure and heavy weapons capability with surgical precision. Sarah Chun had moved to her third firing position and was tracking another target when she noticed the aliens attempting something new. Several of them had deployed what appeared to be advanced sensor equipment, and were scanning the ridgelines methodically. Her position was well concealed, but she recognized the need to eliminate that capability before it compromised all the sniper teams. She adjusted her scope for the nearly 5-kilometer shot to the sensor operator. Wind had picked up slightly, requiring compensation for drift. The target was partially concealed behind equipment, offering only a limited profile. Sarah controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate settle into the zone where her shots achieved perfect precision. The projectile struck the alien sensor operator precisely where intended, also destroying the scanning equipment in a shower of sparks and alien electronics. The secondary explosion suggested the device had contained some form of energy storage that didn't react well to high-velocity impact. Sensor array down, Sarah reported quietly. Continuing engagement. The systematic elimination of hegemony soldiers continued across the next 30 minutes. Every time the aliens attempted to establish heavy weapons positions, human snipers eliminated the operators before they could bring their systems online. Every time command figures tried to coordinate tactical responses, precise shots removed them from a battlefield. The psychological effect was as devastating as the physical casualties. Hegemony soldiers, trained to face enemies at conventional combat ranges, found themselves helpless against opponents they couldn't see or effectively engage. The knowledge that death could arrive without warning from impossible distances shattered the confidence that had carried them through 17 systems of conquest. Command, recommend immediate withdrawal, transmitted Squad Leader Vorthek from his position behind inadequate cover. We cannot effectively engage the enemy at current ranges. Our weapons are not designed for this type of engagement. Commander Zethkar studied his tactical display in growing disbelief. His force had been reduced by nearly a third without inflicting any confirmed casualties on the enemy. Every attempt to locate and suppress the human firing positions had failed. His soldiers were pinned down by an enemy that remained effectively invisible while demonstrating precision that exceeded anything in hegemony experience. Tactical assessment, he demanded of his remaining staff officers. The humans have developed ballistic technology beyond predicted parameters, reported his intelligence officer. Individual marksmen are achieving accuracy at ranges where our return fire cannot be effectively directed. They appear to be using chemical propellant weapons that fire dense projectiles at hypersonic velocities. Recommendation: withdraw to defensible positions and request heavy orbital bombardment of all elevated terrain within weapon range of our positions. The recommendation represented a fundamental admission that hegemony ground forces could not effectively engage human defenders under current conditions. In 17 systems of conquest, no ground force had ever been forced to request such extensive orbital support against individual marksmen. But as another command figure died to a perfectly placed shot from over 6 kilometers away, Zethkar realized he faced a choice between tactical withdrawal and the complete elimination of his assault force by enemies he couldn't engage. All units, tactical withdrawal to position Gamma, he ordered. Maintain dispersion and evasive movement. Request immediate heavy bombardment of grid squares Alpha through Zulu. The hegemony force began its retreat under continued precision fire from the human snipers. Sarah Chan tracked retreating figures through her scope, selecting targets that would maximize disruption of their withdrawal. Her shots continued to find their marks, even as the range increased beyond 6 kilometers. Elena Rodriguez, from her northern position, maintained fire on the flanking elements of the retreat. Her specialty in moving targets proved devastating as aliens attempted to bound between cover positions. Marcus Thompson, from the southern ridge, concentrated on what appeared to be command vehicles attempting to coordinate the withdrawal. By the time the hegemony force reached relative safety beyond the range of human ballistic weapons, they had lost nearly half their number to an enemy they had never effectively engaged. The most powerful military force in the known galaxy had been defeated by individual humans with rifles, operating at ranges that redefined the concept of small unit tactics. Commander Zethkar stared at his tactical display in shock silence. The greatest military machine known to galactic civilization had been stopped by what amounted to enhanced hunters with primitive chemical propellant weapons. It challenged everything the hegemony understood about warfare and technological progression. The humans had just demonstrated that sometimes the simplest technologies, refined to perfection, could defeat the most advanced systems ever developed. Admiral Korth Vash materialized in the command chamber of the assault vessel through quantum transmission from the flagship. His presence immediately commanded absolute attention from every officer present. As supreme military commander of the hegemony's 7th Fleet, he had overseen the successful subjugation of 43 worlds and the integration of 17 different species into the Empire. His reputation was built on swift, decisive victories achieved through overwhelming technological superiority. "Explain," he commanded, his enhanced vocal cords producing harmonics that conveyed authority across multiple frequency ranges. Commander Zethkar activated the tactical hologram, displaying the previous day's engagement in three-dimensional detail. Red markers indicated fallen hegemony soldiers, while blue zones showed estimated human firing positions. The display painted a picture that challenged fundamental assumptions about warfare. The humans achieved effective suppression of our ground forces using primitive ballistic weapons at ranges exceeding 6,000 meters, Zethkar reported. Individual marksmen eliminated command staff and heavy weapons operators with precision that exceeds our understanding of chemical propellant technology. Admiral Korth Vash studied the holographic display with growing incredulity. The tactical summary showed hegemony forces suffering catastrophic casualties while failing to inflict any confirmed damage on human defenders. In 4 decades of military service, he had never encountered a situation where primitive weapons had proven superior to advanced energy technology. "Sensor data analysis?" he inquired. "Minimal energy signatures detected prior to impact," replied intelligence specialist Mekthara. "The projectiles appear to be dense metallic cores propelled by chemical explosions. Velocity measurements suggest speeds approaching 3,000 meters per second. Kinetic energy at impact exceeds our adaptive armor's absorption capacity." The Admiral's expression darkened as the implications became clear. These humans have refined primitive ballistic technology to effectiveness levels that exceed our defensive parameters. Confirmed. Additionally, their marksmen demonstrate accuracy that suggests enhancement beyond normal biological capabilities. Some recorded shots achieve precision targeting at ranges where atmospheric distortion should prevent accurate fire. Admiral Korth Vash had built his career on understanding enemy capabilities and developing appropriate countermeasures. The tactical situation presented by the humans was unprecedented in his experience. No species had ever developed primitive weapons to such extreme effectiveness while apparently ignoring more advanced technological development paths. Recommendations from Fleet Tactical Analysis? Tactical Coordinator Vexthane activated additional displays showing orbital bombardment patterns and planetary assault doctrine. Heavy orbital bombardment of all elevated terrain within ballistic weapon range of target areas. Elimination of potential firing positions through widespread energy bombardment. Estimated collateral damage. Significant. The effective range of human ballistic weapons requires bombardment across several thousand square kilometers of terrain. Environmental damage will be substantial. The Admiral considered the implications. Standard hegemony doctrine emphasized the capture and integration of conquered worlds with minimal infrastructure damage. Orbital bombardment on the scale required to neutralize human sniper positions would render large portions of the planet uninhabitable and destroy resources the Empire intended to exploit. Alternative approaches. Ground forces equipped with enhanced armor and long-range energy weapons. Modified assault doctrine emphasizing indirect approaches and night operations to minimize exposure to human marksmen. Analysis suggests this approach will also prove inadequate. Interjected intelligence specialist Mekthara. Human snipers demonstrated effectiveness during night operations against our enhanced scouts. Their ballistic weapons appear equally effective in reduced visibility conditions. Admiral Korthvash reviewed the tactical recordings again, studying individual engagements frame by frame. The human marksman had eliminated targets with mechanical precision that suggested technological enhancement or training regimens beyond normal biological limitations. More concerning was their apparent ability to coordinate fires across vast distances without detectable communication systems. Intelligence assessment of human military capabilities? Severely incomplete, Mechthara admitted. Initial reconnaissance suggested primitive technology and limited military organization. Current evidence indicates sophisticated individual combat training and weapons technology that achieves superior performance through design optimization rather than energy-based advancement. The admission represented a fundamental failure of hegemony intelligence gathering. Standard assessment protocols had never encountered a species that developed primitive weapons to such extreme effectiveness, while apparently neglecting more advanced technologies. Fleet composition analysis, the Admiral commanded. Tactical displays showed the disposition of hegemony forces throughout the system. 3 heavy cruisers, 12 assault vessels, and 46 support craft represented overwhelming firepower by conventional standards. The assembled fleet could reduce the entire planet to molten slag within standard rotations. But destruction was not the objective. The hegemony required intact worlds with functional infrastructure and exploitable resources. The humans had created a tactical situation where conventional victory required methods that would eliminate the value of conquest. Contact the human leadership, Admiral Korthvash decided. Initiate diplomatic communication protocols. The decision surprised his assembled staff. Hegemony policy had never included negotiation with species designated for integration. Military superiority had always proven sufficient to compel surrender and acceptance of imperial authority. Admiral, question Fleet Coordinator Kinshasa. Standard doctrine does not include diplomatic engagement with resistance forces. Standard doctrine has not encountered resistance capable of neutralizing our ground forces without suffering casualties, the Admiral replied. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that require reassessment of our approach. Within hours, quantum communication links established contact with the human colonial leadership. Colonel Martinez, military commander of New Eden Colony, appeared in holographic projection within the hegemony command chamber. His presence, despite being merely a visual transmission, commanded immediate attention from officers accustomed to dealing with subjugated species. I am Admiral Korthvash of the Hegemony 7th Fleet, he announced through translation protocols. You have demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our initial assessment. We propose discussion of terms for your integration into the hegemony. Colonel Martinez studied the assembled alien officers with the calm expression of someone who held significantly better cards than his opponents realized. Admiral, we appreciate your recognition of our capabilities. However, we have no interest in integration into your empire. We propose that you withdraw from our system and leave us in peace. That is not acceptable, the Admiral replied. The hegemony does not withdraw from contested systems. Then, we have a problem, Colonel Martinez said calmly. Because we will not surrender, and you cannot defeat us without destroying what you came here to take. The exchange that followed revealed the fundamental challenge facing the hegemony. The humans possessed neither advanced energy weapons nor sophisticated defensive systems. They had no space fleet capable of challenging hegemony naval supremacy. Their technology by galactic standards was primitive and limited, but they had refined the art of precision marksmanship to levels that neutralized conventional ground assault doctrine. Individual humans, operating alone or in small teams, could eliminate entire squads of enhanced hegemony soldiers from distances where return fire was ineffective. The psychological and tactical impact was devastating. Explain your military doctrine, Admiral Korthvash requested during the extended communication session. Colonel Martinez considered the question carefully. We learned early in our development that accuracy matters more than firepower. A single shot, precisely placed, achieves better results than massive suppression fire that misses its target. We developed individual marksmanship to levels that your forces apparently haven't encountered. Your weapons are primitive chemical propellants, the Admiral observed. Refined chemical propellants, the Colonel corrected. Optimized for accuracy, velocity, and terminal performance. Our marksmen train from childhood to place projectiles exactly where intended at distances you consider impossible. It's not magic, Admiral. It's practice and precision engineering applied to basic ballistic science. The explanation challenged hegemony assumptions about technological progression. Most species developed energy weapons as soon as basic physics was understood, abandoning projectile weapons as primitive and ineffective. Humans had continued refining ballistic technology to achieve performance levels that exceeded more advanced systems in specific applications. Your marksmen eliminate our soldiers at ranges where conventional engagement is impossible, Admiral Korthvash acknowledged. That's the point, Colonel Martinez replied. Effective range is our primary tactical advantage. Your soldiers are impressive in close combat, but they never reach close combat range when our snipers can engage them from distances where your weapons are ineffective. The tactical revelation was profound. The hegemony had developed military doctrine based on energy weapons with effective ranges measured in hundreds of meters. Human ballistic weapons achieved lethal accuracy at distances 10 times greater while remaining undetectable until the moment of impact. What would you consider acceptable terms for coexistence? The Admiral inquired. Complete withdrawal of hegemony forces from our system, Colonel Martinez stated without hesitation. Recognition of human sovereignty over our territory. Commitment that the hegemony will not return with larger forces to attempt conquest through orbital bombardment. Impossible, Admiral Korthvash replied. The hegemony cannot appear to retreat from inferior forces. Admiral, the Colonel said with quiet confidence, we are not inferior forces. We are forces specifically optimized to defeat your tactical doctrine. You have learned that energy weapons and heavy armor are ineffective against precision ballistic fire at extreme range. We have learned that your enhanced soldiers and advanced technology cannot overcome fundamental tactical disadvantages. The conversation continued for hours as both sides explored options that would allow the hegemony to withdraw without losing face while providing humans with security guarantees. But underlying every proposal was the stark reality that human snipers had fundamentally altered the tactical balance. What prevents us from simply destroying your colony from orbit? Admiral Korthvash eventually asked. Nothing, Colonel Martinez admitted. You can certainly turn this entire planet into radioactive slag. But then you gain nothing except a reputation as an empire that destroys what it cannot conquer. Other species will learn that submission to the hegemony offers no protection, that resistance leads to extinction regardless of military effectiveness. The psychological warfare was as sophisticated as the marksmanship. The humans understood that their tactical victory had implications beyond the immediate engagement. Success against hegemony ground forces would encourage resistance throughout the empire if word spread that conventional military superiority could be overcome through specialized tactics and superior individual training. Admiral Korthvash realized that the humans had created a strategic dilemma that extended far beyond a single planet. Military victory through orbital bombardment would establish dangerous precedents and potentially inspire other species to develop asymmetric capabilities. Retreat would demonstrate hegemony vulnerability and encourage resistance movements throughout the empire. But the immediate tactical situation remained unchanged. Human snipers had proven capable of eliminating hegemony ground forces without suffering significant casualties in return. The most powerful military machine in known space had been stopped by individuals with rifles who could place projectiles with supernatural precision across impossible distances. The hegemony faced its first genuine military defeat in 3 centuries of conquest, administered by humans who had turned the simple art of accurate shooting into a weapon that redefined the possibilities of warfare.